Hi there, everyone. My name is Sheema Curkovic. I'm a professor of supply chain management at Western Michigan University. At Western, we don't call it supply chain management, we call it integrated supply management. One of the reasons for that is because it's not a chain. Really, it never has been. If you look at buying organizations and OEMs and suppliers, they all do business with each other directly and indirectly within and across industries. So you could have a first tier supplier to an automotive OEM like Ford. That first tier supplier could likewise be a second tier supplier to someone else, and that someone else could be a customer to the first tier supplier. My point is, if you look at the companies out there that do business with each other within and across supply chains, within the same industries and across different industries, everyone out there basically does business with each other directly and indirectly. And if you really looked at what it looked like, it doesn't look like a chain. It looks like a web or a matrix or a network of a bunch of companies doing business with each other directly and or indirectly. So we don't call it supply chain management, we call it integrated supply management. So we basically got rid of the word chain, and we call it integrated because our students basically major in three distinct yet interrelated functional areas, those being purchasing, operations, and logistics management. And basically companies that integrate those three distinct yet interrelated functional areas, being purchasing, operations, and logistics management, do things better, faster, and cheaper. So the curriculum is basically integrated supply management, and for most people out there, they refer to it as supply chain management. Okay, now to the heart of this presentation and discussion. I get a lot of questions from people where they ask me, I would like to work in supply chain management and get a job in supply chain management, but do I need an undergraduate degree in supply chain management to work in supply chain management? Okay, so that's one question I want to tackle. The other question I get is I have students that are engineering majors asking if that's a good fit for supply chain roles and jobs. And if so, if they should minor in ISM or supply chain management to be better prepared for those jobs in supply chain management. So first question, do I need to major in supply chain management to get a job in supply chain management? Okay, in general, the answer is no. Most of the companies that recruit and hire my students, those companies and managers have entry-level managerial positions in supply chain management. They pay a premium for my students majoring in supply chain management. My students are basically business majors that take classes in supply chain management, that also take engineering classes, and that also take technology classes that build up their, for example, data analytics skills, okay? So we prepare our students to have a combination of both hard skills and soft skills. We train them to not only be supply chain professionals, but have strategic skill sets associated with being able to talk to engineers, manage large amounts of data, to be able to negotiate, to understand the legal issues associated with the supply chain and doing business with suppliers and having contracts with them, et cetera, et cetera. So when it's all said and done, we'll provide them with a comprehensive education in supply chain management for supply chain roles. If you look at the number of classes that our students have to take, it's close to twice as many classes in their major as other supply chain majors have to take at other programs like Michigan State University, Arizona State University, Penn State University. The reason for that is our students don't only take supply chain classes in the business college, they also take engineering classes at the engineering college taught by engineering professors with other engineering students and majors. We build those technical skills. Then rather recently, we've been really focused on building their technology skills, and specifically business and data analytics. So when it's all said and done, our students have around 43 credit hours in their supply chain major versus around 20 some at most other programs where students major in supply chain management. Okay, so companies that recruit from our program, in general, they say, for a supply chain job, I want a supply chain student, okay? There are companies out there that say that's not absolutely necessary. So you could be a business major and get a supply chain management job out of school. For example, let's say you're a business major majoring in marketing or business management, something general and more generic. If you have work experience On the supply chain side, you might be qualified for a supply chain job and role after college. I actually had one company tell me that for their supply chain jobs, they don't care what you major in as long as you graduate with a college degree. The company, it's a Fortune 500 company, basically said, we're going to have a company and organization called Gallup interview you to create a psychological profile of you. And if your psychological profile matches up with our corporate culture, that's what we're really looking for. And then once we identify that person whose psychological profile matches up with our corporate culture, we'll train you and develop you into that role. So if that job is in supply chain management, we don't care if you majored in supply chain management, as long as you, again, have that psychological profile that's consistent with their corporate culture. They will train you, develop you, nurture you, and grow you into that role. They have that much confidence in their ability to train you that you don't need to major in the area that you're going into. Okay, I would say those are the exceptions, but there are companies out there where, if you get your college degree and you got the soft skills and you interview well and they see long-term potential and they trust and value their training programs, they will put you in supply chain roles even though you didn't major in supply chain management. But again, I would say that's the exception. Okay, back to the original question. If you want a job in supply chain management straight out of college, my recommendation would be get a degree in supply chain management. Why? Because in general, that's what companies want and prefer. The good news is demand exceeds supply and companies pay a premium for those skill sets associated with majoring in supply chain management. However, there's one exception. Companies in a perfect world, you know what they really, really want for entry-level managerial positions in supply chain management? They want engineering students that are majoring in engineering because they place that much of a premium on those technical skills. Yes, you heard me right. They would prefer engineers in traditional entry-level managerial supply chain roles. Now, what types of companies am I talking about? In general, the industrials, the companies that build and design stuff. So you're starting to see the connection as to why would they prefer an engineering major over a supply chain major for an entry-level managerial supply chain role, because they place that much of a premium on those technical skills. And I basically have companies asking me and telling me, hey, do you have any of those students? When I basically tell them is, when students decide they want to major in engineering, in general, they want engineering jobs. They majored in engineering to become engineers, and they want engineering jobs because they want to be involved in, for example, design issues, product and process design issues. If they wanted to go into a supply chain role, they might have majored in that to begin with. Okay, so what's happened is companies are telling me, hey, Sheema, do you have any students out there that are majoring in engineering that would consider taking on a supply chain role? And there just aren't that many out there. And I think one of the reasons for that is a lot of our engineering majors don't understand and see the opportunities that are out there. Furthermore, they might think that they might not be able to get market value based on what they majored in if they go into a supply chain role. And I wanted to basically say that's not the case. First of all, the starting salaries for someone graduating with a supply chain management degree are very close to those students majoring in engineering and getting engineering jobs straight out of college. So I think one of the reasons that a lot of engineering majors don't want supply chain management jobs straight out of school is they don't necessarily want to hire in at a discount or take a pay cut right off the bat because they majored in a technical area where demand traditionally exceeds supply, and they want companies to pay up and pay a premium for those technical skill sets. I'm here to tell you that there's such a shortage and demand exceeds supply for supply chain students that the difference in starting salary between a supply chain major and an engineering major is not that significant. So you don't have to give up a salary premium in order to go into supply chain management if you have an engineering degree. Okay, so I want to make that point. Also, here's the other part of it. A lot of companies out there place such a premium on people majoring in engineering that if they're willing to go into a supply chain role, they will pay them more because they have an engineering degree than someone that has a supply chain degree for, in essence, the same job. For example, there's a company out there, it's an automotive OEM. They start my students out at $75K a year straight out. So if you majored in ISM or supply chain management, this company will pay my students $75K straight out. They'll put them in a job rotation program for 2 years, rotate them every 6 months, and they start them off at $75K a year. That same company says, we'll take an engineering major, put them in the same job rotation within supply chain management, and pay them more. Think about what I just said there. And this really upsets my ISM students, that they take a job with this company, and then an engineering major takes the same job with the same company, just in a different part of the company, the same role, and that company will pay the engineering major $3,000 to $5,000 more per year straight out of school for the same job, the same role in supply chain management. Now, I have students come to me and complain to me about this and say that's discriminatory in nature, and this is what I say. That company prefers engineering majors over you. They just can't find any. First of all, there aren't many engineering majors to begin with. Furthermore, most engineering majors don't want to go into supply chain management. So strictly based on supply and demand conditions, what they want, they can't get as easily as they can find supply chain majors to take on supply chain roles. So as far as I'm concerned, that's just basic supply and demand conditions. Yeah, you both have the same jobs, but they paid a premium to get the engineering major into that supply chain role because it's harder to do so. Okay, so I have no issues with that whatsoever. So along the same lines, if you're an engineering major and you have an interest in going into a supply chain role at an industrial like an automotive OEM, why not minor in ISM? And then I think you really solidify companies preferring you over supply chain management majors, and then likewise paying a premium for you over supply chain management majors. I have companies coming to me all the time and saying, we can't get enough of those engineering majors that also minor in ISM or supply chain management. And I'm trying to get the word out and communicate to the engineering majors that there's an opportunity out there for you to minor in something that gets you into a part of the organization that companies are starting to take very, very seriously and very strategically. Likewise, just because you minor in ISM and supply chain management doesn't mean that you have to go into this area straight out of school. Maybe further along down the road, this is an area of interest to you, and you could have that ISM or supply chain management minor to fall on. So again, a bunch of companies out there that really, really want strong technical skills, especially on the engineering side, because they place a premium. They think that's a huge part of their core competency. If you're an industrial, like an automotive OEM, designing and building cars and trucks is probably what you have to be really, really good at. And they want people in managerial roles to have strong technical skills because their world revolves around technical issues like engineering, product and process design issues, for example. And I think engineers also bring not only a lot of hard skills to the table, but also a lot of soft skills, for example, problem solving. Okay, so again, the opportunities are intense and immense, and I think you need to seriously consider, if you're an engineering person, to maybe not graduate and then go directly into a supply chain role, but just keep in mind that if you do, companies have an interest, and if you do, they will listen, and you probably will do very well in the interviewing process. And again, if you get those jobs, they'll actually pay a premium over people in the same jobs that don't have an engineering degree. So we're back to, you don't have to take a pay cut to not take an engineering job straight out of school. Okay, let's say you graduated a long time ago and you didn't even major in business, let alone supply chain management. So you've graduated, you've been out in the workforce a while, and now you're starting to see that supply chain management is an amazing career path, okay? And you want to get into supply chain management. So I have people contacting me all the time and saying, well, how can I get into supply chain management if I don't have any previous work experience in supply chain management and I didn't major in that when I was an undergrad? One option would be to go get your graduate degree in supply chain management. And most graduate programs in supply chain management are actually geared towards people that don't necessarily have undergraduate degrees in supply chain management or tons of work experience in supply chain management. So I would say to get my foot in the door for a supply chain role, especially if you've been out a while and you're not looking to take on an entry-level managerial position, you're looking for more of a mid-level position, there are a lot of programs out there that cater to people like you. So in particular, if you majored in engineering as an undergrad you graduated, you became an engineer, you got a couple of promotions, and now you're in your late 20s, early 30s, mid 20s, mid 30s, whatever it might be, and you're getting into managerial roles where you're managing engineers, and you're starting to see that there are a lot of opportunities for people like you that have strong technical skills to get into supply chain management. Supply chain management involves that you need a strong business acumen, and maybe you don't have that because you majored in engineering as an undergrad, or maybe you majored in communications as an undergrad. So what you could do is you could get a graduate degree in business with a concentration in supply chain management. For example, let's say Michigan State University, or most Big Ten schools in general, they have MBA programs, which in general are catered towards people that don't have undergraduate degrees in business or received degrees and work experiences in more technical areas like engineering. So I would target brand, image, reputation at the graduate level. And you look at a school like Michigan State University that has an MBA program with a concentration in supply chain management. That concentration in supply chain management is rated #1 on the planet. So in general, I tell students, if you can get your degree in something from a program that's ranked #1, in general, that's probably going to serve you very well. You probably get a great education in that concentration, and you probably tap into a network of students that long-term in the future will be an amazing resource to tap into. So if you look at Michigan State's MBA program with a concentration in supply chain management, if I had to guess, over half of them are probably in mid-level managerial positions. They're trying to round out their business skill sets and business acumen, and they've identified supply chain management as a current or viable future career path. So now they want to get some formal education in supply chain management. If I had to guess, over half of Michigan State's supply chain MBA students are probably engineers, former engineers, students that majored in engineering, and now they don't want to be engineers anymore. They want to be mid-level managers or above. They need a stronger business acumen, and they see supply chain management as a viable career path moving forward in terms of advancement opportunities. So again, those are my recommendations. Basically, the opportunities are tremendous in supply chain management, and anyone can get in if they want to. And I've just presented some options for doing so. Down the road here, you're going to see more and more high-level executives and CEO types probably have supply chain backgrounds, simply because that's the way companies make more money, is they cut costs, and most of their costs are in the supply chain. If you look at what most companies are trying to do and accomplish, most of those results are driven through their supply chains. You have a company, for example, that says they want to be more environmentally friendly, more corporate, socially responsible, more sustainable, greener. Well, most of the environmental and social impact of what that company does is in their supply chain. Most of a company's spend is in their supply chain. So almost every metric that a company is evaluated on, the supply chain is probably that one part of the organization that can have the greatest impact on that thing that that company is measuring that's really, really important to it. And in general, if companies want to make more money, in a lot of industries, the way they do that is they cut costs. Where do most of their costs come from? From their supply chain. So again, viable career path, give it serious consideration. The vice president of supply chain management is an executive level position. And that person probably talks to the CEO of most industrials multiple times daily. So that's a good sign, and it's a career path worth considering. And if you have a technical background, for example, or if you don't, and you don't have a supply chain background, you can get your foot in the door. And again, they want engineers. So if you're an engineering major and you hear that people want you in particular, that should probably trigger the light bulb, and you should at least give it serious consideration. Thank you for your time. Reach out if I can help or answer anything beyond what I've discussed in this video. Thank you.